Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The new question is to the acting premier. Last week, Ontario's ombudsman closed their last investigation into Hydro One. But it's not because they were actually done their work. It's because they were forced out by this Liberal government. Why have the Liberals chosen to force the Ontario Ombudsman out of Hydro One and no longer provide public oversight of Hydro One?
Shame on you.
Minister of Energy.
Minister of Energy.
That we passed legislation requiring Hydro One to have an internal ombudsman, Mr. Speaker. Not only did we do that, we engaged Denny Desautels, former Auditor General of Canada, to oversee the implementation. Hydro One has already appointed
Finish, please.
Hydro One has already appointed a very well-known ombudsman, Mr. Speaker, the former ombudsman for the City of Toronto. She's on the job, Mr. Speaker. She's setting up the office, and Denny Desautels is still overseeing that process, Mr. Speaker. It's a very, very responsible way to move forward, Mr. Speaker. We have an ombudsman. That ombudsman will make a decision. If that decision is not satisfactory to the complainant, Mr. Speaker, they have a right to appeal to the Ontario Energy Board, Mr. Speaker. There's very, very strong protection.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I have a very simple question. Can the acting premier explain why she thinks that the public Ontario Ombudsman should no longer have oversight of Hydro One?
The simple answer, Mr. Speaker, we've gone from being a Crown corporation to being a trading company on the TSX, Mr. Speaker. So there needs to be a new governance regimen in place, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
The official parliamentary officers, Mr. Speaker, do not govern or manage private sector or stock trading companies, Mr. Speaker. We do have an ombudsman who is in place, the right to appeal, Mr. Speaker, and there are other protections there, Mr. Speaker. Under the Ontario Securities Commission, if they're non-compliant with any of the rules, Mr. Speaker, it's very, very transparent. They have to disclose the senior management salaries, Mr. Speaker. We disclosed it in the preliminary prospectus, Mr. Speaker. That's very transparent. They were accusing us of creating a non-transparent process, and as a matter of fact, in order to become a private Hydro One, Mr. Speaker, they basically had to
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, there are other jurisdictions in this world that do it completely differently. In fact, in Australia, a public ombudsman oversees all water, hydro, and gas. In Spain, a public ombudsman oversees private companies that render public services. Can the acting premier explain to Ontarians why, as of last week, Ontario families will no longer have the ombudsman on their side when they have any issue or problems with Hydro One?
Thank you. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there's a new CEO and a new chair of the board. And a new board at Hydro One at the present time, Mr. Speaker. Their priority is to be customer-focused. Mr. Speaker,
Tried to do it calmly. If you want me to get upset, I will. Let's just get through this. Carry on, please.
Mr. Speaker, they have a priority of focusing on customer service, Mr. Speaker. The chair of the board, David Dennison, issued a report several weeks ago referring to the Ombudsman's report. His response was that the number of customers currently experiencing delayed billing has been reduced to 340 as of June, from a peak of over 50,000 during the height of the billing issues in 2013-2014, Mr. Speaker.
Answer.
He's also indicated the timely issuance of accurate bills is the highest that has been in the history of Hydro One, at a success rate of 99.8%.
Thank you. Question, the member from Dufferin-Caledon.